My beloved child, a trembling message is rising in the spirit right now, and Archangel Michael is standing closer than he is in months. He is drawing his sword of dazzling blue fire, because the title declared over you is not a metaphor, not a symbol, but a spiritual emergency. Prophetic emergency alert. A powerful shift is coming to your life in the next 3 hours. God needs you to hear this now. These words are vibrating in the unseen realm, and Michael is urging you to listen with the deepest part of your soul. A movement is taking shape around you, quiet, invisible, strategic. You may not feel it yet, but heaven has already started shifting the ground beneath your life. Something that has been stagnant for too long is being forced into motion. Michael says there is a divine interruption unfolding, one that will not wait for your convenience, one that will change the timeline you've been trapped in. He whispers that within the next 3 hours, a spiritual exchange will take place. What has been pressing against you is about to break open, and what has been draining you is about to be exposed. Listen closely. Michael reveals that this shift is not random. It is calculated. Heaven waited for this exact moment, because you are finally ready to hear what was once too heavy to carry. There is a hidden cycle that has repeated in your life, and though you tried to outrun it, it followed. But the sword is descending now, not to harm you, but to break what has kept you in emotional captivity. He shows me the image of a locked door you've been knocking on for years. You questioned yourself, questioned God, questioned the timing. You wondered why nothing moved. But Michael says the door wasn't locked, it simply wasn't your time to open it. And now, that time is arriving. Quickly, abruptly, unmistakably. There is a shift in the spirit that will cause certain people to reveal their real intentions. Masks will slip. Words will expose hearts. The connection you thought was stable may suddenly feel shaky, not because you are losing anything, but because God is removing what your destiny can no longer carry. Someone has been speaking against your purpose in places you cannot see, and heaven is about to make their voice echo into the open. Michael tells you, do not fear exposure. For exposure is not loss, it is liberation. What leaves your life in truth was never meant to stay. You are stepping into a window of time where heaven is rearranging your path, people, opportunities, and spiritual covering. For some, this will feel like sudden clarity. For others, it will feel like a spiritual earthquake. But either way, the shift is coming, and nothing can stop it. I see your name being lifted before God, and Michael placing his wings around it. The fire surrounding your name is a sign. Heaven is marking you for transformation. You may feel pressure, restlessness, or unusual emotion right now. That's because your spirit already senses what your mind has not yet understood. Before this shift completes, there will be a moment, small, subtle, yet powerful, where something inside you clicks. A revelation, a sign, a stirring. Pay attention. This will be the confirmation that the next 3 hours have been sealed by heaven. And the message from Michael grows louder. Stay awake in your spirit. Do not drift. The next moments carry meaning. Something important is about to be unveiled, and you do not want your heart to miss the divine signal aligned with your destiny. Before you go, pause for one breath, because what unfolds next will determine the momentum of your next season. Hold on. You'll want to see what happens next. This is where the shift becomes undeniable. Type I receive the shift in the comments if this speaks to you. Blessing code 144 has now been activated. Dearest soul of light, as the spiritual atmosphere tightens around this moment, Archangel Michael steps forward again, his presence heavier, stronger, and far more intentional than before. He is not appearing in this hour to soothe you gently, but to prepare you for what heaven has already set in motion. The prophetic emergency declared over your life is unfolding exactly as spoken. A powerful shift is coming to you in the next 3 hours, and God needs your spirit awake, alert, and willing to receive without hesitation. You may feel a strange stirring inside you as you hear these words, almost like something is pulling you inward to listen more closely. That is not imagination. It is alignment, a divine recalibration, a heavenly summons. Right now, Michael is showing me a vision of your life, like a map. There are roads you tried to walk that were blocked without warning. There were seasons where progress felt impossible. There were promises that seemed to hang in the air without ever touching the ground. But now, I see Michael placing his sword against that map, and the sword releases a flash of blue fire that burns through an invisible barrier you never knew was there. This barrier has been standing for years. It has resisted your prayers, delayed your growth, and complicated your peace. And yet, heaven did not break it earlier, not because God was ignoring you, but because the shift meant for this exact hour required the barrier to break at the appointed time. That moment is now. Not later. Not eventually. Now. Michael says there has been a spiritual obstruction around you crafted by a mixture of old wounds, drained energy, and hidden opposition. Someone connected to your life, emotionally or spiritually, has been creating interference without even realizing the weight of their influence. Their fear became your hesitation. Their doubt became your inner conflict. Their instability became your spiritual turbulence. Heaven allowed the situation to last for a time, not to punish you, but to develop discernment in you. Now that discernment has matured, you can see things you never would have recognized years ago. You can feel energy shifts that once passed by unnoticed. And heaven says, because you are ready, the shift can begin. There is a message Michael is repeating, and it echoes like thunder in the spirit. Do not cling to what I am releasing you from. What feels like loss is actually rescue. You have been trying to hold certain pieces of your life together out of loyalty, patience, or hope. But heaven is removing what cannot travel with you into the next part of your journey. Some relationships are reaching a spiritual expiration date. Some cycles are dissolving. Some old patterns are losing their power. Do not mourn what heaven calls finish. What is leaving you now was only meant to stay long enough to shape you, not to anchor you. As this shift approaches, your senses may heighten. You might feel more sensitive, more emotional, more spiritually aware than usual. This is not weakness. This is spiritual preparation. A heavenly download. A transition of authority. Michael says you have been walking with weight on your shoulders for too long, carrying responsibilities that were never yours to carry alone. God is lifting that weight. A new clarity is approaching, sharp, sudden, and undeniable. You will wake up internally to truths you have avoided, and the moment you acknowledge them, everything begins to move forward. I see an hourglass turning in the spirit realm. Sand is rushing to the bottom faster than before, signaling acceleration. What once took months will begin happening in days. What once took days will happen in moments. Heaven is speeding up the fulfillment of promises, breakthroughs, and divine connections. And Michael says this acceleration will not feel chaotic to you. Instead, it will feel like finally stepping into the rhythm your soul has known was meant for you all along. But with acceleration comes exposure. Truth cannot hide in this new timeline. Any person operating in double intentions, unspoken jealousy, quiet sabotage, or emotional manipulation will be revealed. You will hear things differently. You will see things differently. Conversations will carry new meaning. Little comments that once slipped by unnoticed will now stand out like spiritual alarms. This is heaven protecting you. This is Michael shielding you from deception and preparing you for authenticity. Heaven is also aligning you with a new spiritual assignment. You have been sensing it without having the words for it. A restlessness, a feeling that where you are no longer matches who you are becoming. Your spirit has outgrown your surroundings, and that is why your heart feels stretched. Michael says your next season carries greater authority, greater responsibility, and greater spiritual influence than you have ever walked in. God is expanding your capacity, even if the process feels uncomfortable. Your timeline is changing, and this is why heaven needed you to hear this message now. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. Because the shift carries a window of divine opportunity attached to it, and your awareness is the key that unlocks what heaven is sending your way. Before this part closes, Michael instructs you to remain attentive. Something subtle will happen soon. A sign in conversation, a shift in atmosphere, an unexpected inner knowing. When it happens, you will recognize it instantly. It will be the signal that the heavenly shift has begun. Trust me, this next revelation will strike deeper than you expect, and the unfolding will only intensify from here. Type "I am ready for the shift" in the comments if this resonates with your spirit. Blessing code 229 has now been released. Precious heart, breathe for a moment, because as this next wave of revelation opens, Archangel Michael's presence intensifies with a force that feels like the air itself is shifting around your life. He is not standing at a distance anymore. He is beside you, watching over your spirit with a fierce loyalty that only a heavenly warrior can carry. And he speaks with an urgency that is impossible to ignore. The declaration over you, prophetic emergency alert, a powerful shift is coming to your life in the next 3 hours. God needs you to hear this now. It is not a poetic headline. It is a divine summons. A spiritual tap on your shoulder from the throne room itself. Heaven is aligning the next moments of your journey with precision, and Michael is guiding you step by step so you do not miss the signs preparing to appear in your path. Right now, Michael reveals a hidden truth that has been quietly influencing your life. Someone connected to your inner world has been operating with an energy that does not match your calling. They may have smiled, supported you, or pretended to understand you, but their spirit has been out of alignment with your purpose. They carry unresolved jealousy, fear, or silent resentment, and even though their feelings were never spoken aloud, their energy has been affecting your atmosphere. You have been feeling drained without knowing why. You have been questioning your strength without any clear reason. You have been carrying emotions that didn't belong to you. And Michael says this energy has been one of the silent barriers that heaven is now preparing to break. Heaven is bringing clarity into the places where confusion was allowed to grow. Things you brushed aside as small or insignificant will suddenly make sense. A whispered comment. A shift in tone. A sudden distance. A strange tension. Heaven is uncovering these moments, not to create fear, but to free you from the emotional fog that has clouded your discernment. Michael says your destiny has reached a turning point, and anything that pollutes your spiritual clarity cannot remain attached to you in this hour of transformation. You may feel a spiritual trembling starting inside you, almost like your inner world is expanding beyond the boundaries of who you used to be. This sensation is not anxiety. It is awakening, a stretching. Your spirit is stepping into alignment with the new season heaven has prepared, and that alignment requires the shedding of old emotional weights you once thought you needed. Michael shows a vision of you stepping out of an old garment, worn, faded, soaked with past tears, and stepping into something radiant, clean, and filled with new authority. This is the shift. This is the transition. This is the moment your soul has been waiting for, even when your mind didn't understand the longing. Heaven is also preparing to release new opportunities into your life. Opportunities that match your spiritual maturity, not your past wounds. There is a conversation coming, a connection coming, a moment of divine timing so precise that you will know immediately it could not have been orchestrated by human hands. When it arrives, it will lift a pressure from your heart that has been building for years. Michael says your timeline is about to accelerate, and what you thought would take years will unfold in a matter of weeks or even days. But this acceleration requires spiritual readiness. It requires awareness. It requires courage. There is something else Michael wants you to know. The emotional battles you have fought recently are not a sign of weakness, but the final resistance before breakthrough. Darkness always fights hardest right before heaven shifts the atmosphere. You may have felt attacked in your emotions, sleep patterns, or peace of mind. You may have felt unusually distracted or unsettled. But Michael says these experiences are indicators of spiritual interference trying to prevent you from stepping into what heaven is releasing. Yet the interference is failing. The shift is already in motion. The enemy cannot stop what has been written over your name. The next 3 hours carry divine significance, and you are being guided to stay spiritually alert. Trust what you feel. Trust what you sense. Trust the sudden inner nudges. Heaven will reveal something important, a sign, a message, a moment of clarity that will confirm everything you've been hearing in your spirit. And once that revelation appears, you will never view your path the same way again. Before this moment closes, Michael whispers a final warning. Stay attentive. Stay awakened. What approaches your life now will set the tone for your next season. This is where the story turns. This is where heaven begins to rearrange your reality in ways you never expected. Before you move forward, take a moment to like this message. Share it so others can receive what heaven is releasing. Comment something that connects your faith to this shift, and subscribe so you remain aligned with every future word sent to help guide your spiritual journey. Your interaction keeps this message reaching the souls who desperately need it. Type "I step into the shift" in the comments if your spirit receives it. Blessing code 311 has now been released. Beloved spirit, steady yourself, because as this next layer of revelation unfolds, the atmosphere around you begins to crackle with a force that is not of this world. Archangel Michael stands before you with a seriousness that makes the unseen realm feel tangible, almost as if the very air is vibrating with messages waiting to be released into your understanding. He lifts his sword once more, not in battle this time, but in declaration, pointing it toward the path ahead of you as if marking the very timeline you are about to walk through. The shift spoken over your life, the one heaven has announced, the one set to unfold in the next 3 hours, grows closer with every passing moment, and the spiritual pressure you may be sensing is simply the weight of prophecy taking shape around your destiny. Michael reveals something critical. Heaven has been studying the patterns of your life, the cycles you repeat without even noticing, the emotional wounds you revisit because the memories never fully healed, the promises you made to yourself in silence when you thought no one saw your pain. Every tear you shed in private, every moment you felt misunderstood, every time your heart whispered for clarity or direction, heaven heard it. Not one moment was overlooked. And now, the shift approaching your life is not accidental or sudden. It is a response to years of your endurance, your resilience, and the quiet way you continue to hope even when your hope was battered. There is a divine reason Michael has stepped closer than before. He says the next phase of your journey requires protection, because what heaven is aligning for you is too valuable, too sacred, too intricately woven into your destiny to be interfered with. You are walking into a season where heaven's movement will be unmistakable. Opportunities will appear in ways that defy logic. Conversations will align with your prayers. People will show up in the exact moment you need them. And just as importantly, those who cannot walk with you into this new season will begin to fall away naturally, as though their presence simply cannot survive in the higher atmosphere you are rising into. Michael shows me a vision of you stepping onto a bridge suspended between two realms. Behind you is everything familiar, your comforts, your fears, your old patterns, your old identity. Ahead of you is something glowing with divine clarity, a future not shaped by trauma, confusion, or delay, but by precision, purpose, and divine timing. And here is the astonishing part. The bridge only appears when you decide to move. It does not exist beforehand. It materializes under your feet as soon as you take the first step of faith. The shift coming to your life works the same way. It requires spiritual readiness, a willingness to trust what you sense even when you cannot yet see the full picture. Michael speaks again, and his message pierces the air. Do not fear the unfamiliar path. For the unknown you are being called into is safer than the familiar that has kept you stuck. You have been clinging to certain parts of your life because you believe stability came from sameness. But heaven is teaching you that stability comes from alignment, not repetition. What has been repeating in your life is ending because your spirit has evolved beyond it. Heaven can no longer allow you to shrink yourself to fit into places that have no room for the expanded version of who you are becoming. There is also a revelation concerning your relationships. Someone in your life has been receiving the overflow of your strength without offering the balance of support. You have poured into them, encouraged them, lifted them, even carried emotional weight that was never yours to carry. But the shift will reveal the imbalance. Your spirit will become aware of where your energy flows without return. And Michael says heaven will give you the courage to detach, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in holy clarity. This detachment is necessary because the person you are becoming cannot thrive while carrying burdens that were never assigned to you. Expect your dreams to shift as well. Your subconscious will begin revealing things that your waking mind has ignored. You may dream of doors, pathways, bridges, storms ending, or light breaking through dark skies. These dreams are not random. They are spiritual communication, preparing you for internal transformation. Michael says to pay attention to anything symbolic or repeated. It will carry meaning for the next steps of your journey. Heaven is also releasing a new spiritual boldness over your life. You will notice yourself speaking with more authority, making decisions with more confidence, and walking with a steadiness you have not felt in a long time. This boldness is part of the shift. It is the internal evidence that you are stepping into the identity God has been shaping within you for years. And whether you realize it yet or not, this version of you, the awakened, strengthened, spiritually grounded version, is the version you were always meant to become. Michael emphasizes something crucial as this part draws to a close. There will be a moment in the next hours where everything becomes clear. A sudden awareness. A shift in your inner atmosphere. A moment when you feel your spirit align with heaven in a way that makes perfect sense. When that moment arrives, you will know the shift has begun. Stay spiritually alert, because heaven moves quietly before it moves visibly. Before you scroll away, understand this. What comes next will tie every thread together, and missing it would mean missing the very confirmation your spirit has been asking for. Type "I walk into my shift" in the comments if your spirit feels the truth of this message. Blessing code 558 has now been released. Child of Destiny, take another breath, because as this next revelation opens, the spiritual air around you becomes even heavier with meaning. Archangel Michael steps forward with a calm intensity, the kind that signals something deeply significant is about to be unveiled in your life. You may not realize it yet, but every moment from the instant you heard the prophetic alert has been moving you further into alignment with the shift that heaven has prepared for this hour. Michael is not merely watching over you, he is guiding the rearrangement of your path with precision, ensuring that what unfolds in the next 3 hours is not only transformative but impossible to misunderstand. He stands near you like a guardian positioned at the border of 2 dimensions, making sure you cross into the next one without the old weight that has drained your spirit for far too long. Heaven reveals that there has been a silent battle taking place around your life, one you have felt emotionally without having the language to explain. A battle between old energies trying to pull you backward and divine forces pulling you forward. This is why you have felt stretched. This is why moments of clarity have been followed by moments of confusion. This is why certain days felt like breakthroughs and others felt like setbacks. It was not inconsistency, it was warfare. And now Michael says the battle is nearing its conclusion, because the shift approaching your life will close the doors that spiritual resistance has been trying to keep open. There are ties heaven is preparing to sever, chains heaven is preparing to break, and atmospheres heaven is preparing to detoxify. You are being cleared for your next assignment. Michael shows a vision of a long corridor with doors on both sides. Some doors are shut tightly, others are cracked open slightly. You spent years standing in this corridor, unsure which door to walk toward, unsure which choices align with purpose and which align with fear. But in the vision, I see Michael raising his sword, and with one sweep, several doors close with a force that echoes through the corridor like thunder. These are the doors heaven will no longer allow you to return to. Not because you failed, not because you are unworthy, but because those paths have reached their spiritual expiration date. They have given you all they were meant to give. They have taught you what you needed to learn. Continuing in them would only drain you, not grow you. But then something even more powerful happens. As the closed doors disappear, I see a single door ahead glowing with a light that looks alive, pulsing with purpose, clarity, and divine timing. Michael says this door represents the next phase of your destiny, and the shift approaching in the next hours will illuminate the path that leads directly to it. This door leads to alignment, to restoration, to breakthrough, to relationships that honor your spirit, to assignments that match your calling, to clarity that lifts the fog you've been living in, to opportunities that were delayed not because of failure, but because the old version of you wasn't ready for them. Now you are. Michael reveals another truth. Your spirit has been preparing for this shift long before your mind understood it. You may think you've been tired, but what you were truly experiencing was spiritual shedding. Pieces of your old identity falling away, emotional layers dissolving, broken expectations loosening their grip. You are not losing yourself. You are discovering a deeper, stronger, more spiritually aligned version of yourself. One that refuses to shrink to fit into places that can no longer hold you. One that recognizes your worth without waiting for external validation. One that carries divine authority in your words, your presence, and your decisions. Heaven also speaks concerning a promise that has been hovering over your life, one that felt painfully delayed. You wondered if you misheard God. You wondered if you imagined it. You wondered if it was for someone else. But Michael says heaven did not forget. The delay was not denial. It was preparation. The blessing needed you to grow into the version of yourself that could sustain it. And now, because you have endured the breaking, the stretching, the waiting, And the refining, the promise is coming into reach. Not as a faint possibility, but as a divine appointment. There is something else unfolding in the spiritual atmosphere, a cleansing of your inner circle. Heaven is bringing alignment to your relationships, filtering out connections that weaken your spirit and strengthening those that elevate your purpose. You may notice certain people becoming distant, quiet, or unsettled around you. Do not chase what heaven is removing. Do not try to fix what heaven is dissolving. Michael says some connections were tied to old versions of you, versions that no longer exist. Your elevation will naturally shift your environment, and the people meant to walk with you will rise with you, not resist your transformation. Expect your intuition to sharpen. Expect sudden insights. Expect moments where truth hits you so clearly that it feels like spiritual lightning. These moments are part of the shift. They are heaven awakening parts of you that have been dormant. You will think differently, see differently, respond differently. Things that once triggered you will no longer touch you. Things that once confused you will suddenly make perfect sense. This is the evidence of spiritual maturity unfolding inside you. Michael sends one final message as this part nears its close. Pay attention to the next whisper in your spirit. It will guide you into the first step of the new timeline heaven has written for you. Do not ignore the nudge. Do not silence the intuition. Do not dismiss the feeling. It is heaven speaking. Before you move ahead, wait for the next revelation. It carries a truth you cannot afford to miss. You'll thank yourself for staying with this unfolding. Type "I align with heaven's shift" in the comments if your spirit feels this truth. Blessing code 944 has now been released. Chosen soul, prepare yourself, because as this next unveiling begins, Archangel Michael's presence becomes so concentrated that it feels as if the atmosphere itself is bending around the message heaven is releasing. He stands beside you not merely as a protector, but as a witness to the transformation that is unfolding within and around you. The prophetic emergency sounded over your life has not faded. It is growing louder, deeper, more urgent. Every second that passes brings you closer to the divine shift that was ordained long before you understood the spiritual weight of the season. Michael is guiding you through the final layers of preparation, making sure your spirit is ready for what heaven is about to release into your timeline. His sword is not raised for battle now, but for illumination. And the light from that sword cuts through confusion, fear, and every dark whisper that has tried to convince you that you are unworthy of this moment. Heaven reveals that you have been standing at the edge of a breakthrough that your spirit has sensed for a long time, even when your circumstances didn't reflect it. You have felt the pressure. You have felt the internal stretching. You have felt the moments of deep emotional release that came without warning. These were not random. They were contractions of destiny. Signs that something in your life was preparing to be born. Many people mistake discomfort for danger, but heaven says your discomfort was actually the sign that something divine was trying to push through the borders of your old life. And Michael says the shift approaching in these next hours will bring the birth into clarity. You will understand why things broke, why connections faded, why certain opportunities were withheld, why you felt isolated at times. Heaven wasn't ignoring you. Heaven was preparing you. There is a vision Michael now reveals. You are standing in a field where the ground beneath you has cracks running in every direction. These cracks represent the places where life seemed unstable, where situations felt unpredictable, where you felt as though everything familiar was shifting beneath your feet. But then the cracks begin to glow, not with danger, but with light. Michael says this light is the evidence of divine intervention. Heaven was never letting your life fall apart. It was breaking the ground open to plant something new. What felt like destruction was actually construction. What felt like collapse was the clearing of space. What felt like fragmentation was heaven making room for a greater structure to rise in your life. Michael delivers another message, one that strikes at the center of your spirit. You have been carrying emotional weights that were never meant to belong to you anymore. He shows me memories you've outgrown but still revisit. Wounds you've healed from but continue to protect. Versions of yourself that needed comfort once but no longer define who you are. Heaven is asking you now to release the emotional residues of your past so that the fullness of this shift can enter your spirit without obstruction. You cannot carry both the old story and the new destiny at the same time. Something must be released. And Michael says heaven is giving you the strength to let go without guilt, without hesitation, without fear. Heaven is also bringing deep recalibration to your inner world. Your intuition is sharpening. Your spiritual sensitivity is heightening. Your dreams may intensify. Your emotions may fluctuate. Your awareness may feel unusually strong. This is not instability. This is awakening. The internal shift must occur before the external one can fully unfold. Michael says your spirit is aligning with a frequency it was always meant to operate in. Clearer, higher, holier, more decisive. You are stepping into an identity that carries authority, not merely survival. And with that authority comes a new level of discernment. You will soon see through people's intentions with clarity that once felt unreachable. Words will no longer confuse you. Actions will reveal truth immediately. Energies that drain you will become unmistakable. And connections that are meant for your elevation will feel peaceful, strengthening, and spiritually aligned. This kind of discernment is one of the greatest gifts heaven is imparting during this shift, because what is coming into your life requires you to recognize authentic alignment without hesitation. Michael also speaks concerning a blessing you have been waiting for, one that has lingered just out of reach. You have sensed it in your spirit. You have dreamt about it. You have hope for it even when your hope felt fragile. But heaven says the delay was strategic. The blessing needed the right version of you. A stronger you. A wiser you. A more spiritually awakened you. And now that this version has emerged, a blessing can finally approach without being hindered by old fears or old wounds. Michael says the blessing will not come in fragments. It will come in fullness. And when it arrives, you will feel the weight of heaven's promise settling into your life with a peace you have not felt in a long time. Another vision unfolds. Michael shows me you walking through a hallway filled with mirrors. Each mirror reflects a different version of you, your past selves, your broken selves, your hopeful selves, your healed selves. Yet as you walk, the mirrors one by one begin to turn dark, no longer reflecting anything. Michael says this represents the closing of old identities. Heaven is silencing the echoes of who you used to be so that only the light of who you are becoming can shine. You are stepping into identity transformation, and this shift is part of heaven's final preparation. As this part nears its end, Michael gives a final instruction: remain watchful. The next revelation may come through a whisper, a feeling, a moment you did not expect. Your spirit must stay alert. Something subtle but unmistakable will signal that the shift has begun. Wait for what comes next. Trust me, the next unveiling will carry a depth that will move through your entire spirit. Type "I embrace the NEW timeline" in the comments if your spirit receives this. Blessing code 717 has now been released. Beloved one, steady your spirit as this next wave of revelation opens, because what Archangel Michael is about to unveil carries a depth that reaches into the very foundation of your destiny. His presence surrounds you with a clarity that feels almost electric, as though the unseen realm is drawing nearer to your physical world. Every moment from the first whisper of the prophetic emergency has been building toward this point, and now Michael stands before you with a message so profound that it stretches beyond encouragement or warning. It is a preparation for the spiritual doorway you are about to cross. You may feel a shift within yourself, even now, an internal stirring, a sense that something invisible is pressing against your spirit, urging you to listen not just with your ears, but with your entire being. This is heaven aligning you with the vibrational rhythm of a divine timeline that is moments away from unfolding. Michael reveals that there is a sacred recalibration taking place within your inner world. You have outgrown versions of yourself you did not even realize you had shed. The emotional battles you fought, the moments of exhaustion, the sudden waves of grief or restlessness, none of it was random. Every internal experience has been part of a spiritual detox, a clearing of the pathways that connect your present self to the future heaven has written for you. People often assume that spiritual growth feels peaceful, gentle, and serene. But heaven says the truth is far more intense. Growth does not always look like still waters. Sometimes it feels like a storm inside the soul, shaking loose everything that was never meant to remain. This is why you have been feeling more sensitive lately, more aware of your surroundings, more affected by energies you once ignored. Your spirit is elevating. Your discernment is sharpening. Your intuition is awakening in ways that may surprise even you. Michael says this inner shift is not a side effect. It is a signpost. It is the spiritual evidence that heaven's timing has reached its next phase. Every time you sensed something was changing without knowing what it was, your spirit was picking up on this moment. Every time you felt disconnected from your old patterns or frustrated with what used to satisfy you, it was because heaven was pulling you toward a higher identity. Michael shows a vision of you standing at the edge of a vast expanse, with the sky above shifting in color as though reflecting different seasons in a single moment. This represents the merging of your past, present, and future. Heaven is collapsing old timelines that no longer serve your destiny, and lifting you into the one that aligns perfectly with your calling. You are not simply walking into a new season. You are stepping into a new dimension of purpose, a higher spiritual territory, a realm where clarity and direction will flow with greater ease. Heaven knows you endured seasons where every step felt heavy, where decisions felt foggy, where hope felt almost unreachable. But those seasons were not punishment. They were preparation. Michael says you must understand something powerful. The shift coming into your life is not merely about breakthroughs or blessings. It is about identity. True transformation does not begin with circumstances changing. It begins with you changing internally. And heaven has been reshaping you quietly, persistently, lovingly. You are emerging from a spiritual cocoon, and this emergence is what has triggered the acceleration surrounding your life now. When you hear the words next 3 hours, do not reduce them to a countdown. Think of them as a divine window, a period where heaven has thinned the veil between what is promised and what is about to be delivered. A moment where spiritual signals will become louder and clearer. There is someone in your life whose influence has affected you more deeply than you realize. Their words, actions, or silence carried emotional weight that subtly altered your self-perception. Michael says heaven is breaking the spiritual hold this connection has had over you. Not necessarily by removing the person, but by removing their influence. You will begin to see them with clarity, not through emotion, not through longing, not through old wounds, but through truth. And once truth enters your spirit, you will no longer be manipulated by their inconsistencies or pulled by their instability. Freedom often arrives not when someone leaves, but when their hold dissolves. Heaven is also preparing to release insight concerning decisions you have been wrestling with. Choices about your path, your responsibilities, your relationships, your ambitions. You have been seeking guidance, asking for signs, hoping for confirmation. And Michael says the clarity you seek will come not through noise, but through a quiet moment of undeniable knowing. There will be a moment where confusion melts and peace replaces it entirely. That moment will be your divine signal. I see another vision, you standing before a large, ancient gate, carved with symbols that glow faintly with heavenly fire. This gate does not open through physical effort, but through readiness. When your spirit aligns, the gate responds. And Michael says your alignment is almost complete. You are closer to breakthrough than you have ever been. As this message draws to a close, Michael whispers something profound. Stay awake in your spirit. The next movement of heaven will require your awareness. Something subtle, yet undeniable, is preparing to unfold. Before moving forward, pause your heart for the next revelation. It will carry the missing piece you have been waiting for. Type "I stand at the gate of my shift" in the comments if your spirit receives it. Blessing code 421 has now been released. Beloved soul, prepare your heart, because as this next revelation unfolds, Archangel Michael's presence surrounds you with a gravity that feels almost overwhelming. It is as though the spiritual realm has stepped closer, narrowing the distance between heaven and your atmosphere. Michael stands not just beside you now, but fully in front of you, holding his sword upright as a barrier between you and every force that has attempted to derail your destiny. The prophetic emergency over your life continues to intensify, and the countdown toward your shift grows more potent with every passing moment. Heaven is not simply watching you. Heaven is actively intervening, shaping the air around you, preparing your path with precision, and aligning every spiritual thread that must come together for the next 3 hours to unfold exactly as written. Michael reveals that you are standing in a moment where your past, present, and future are colliding. There are unresolved fragments of your history that have tried to cling to you, shadows of old fears, echoes of old disappointments, and emotional imprints from experiences that wounded your spirit more deeply than you admitted. These fragments attempted to distort your clarity, confuse your direction, and make you question the worthiness of your calling. But heaven says those fragments will no longer hold authority over your spirit. You have reached a point of spiritual maturity that is beginning to dissolve everything that once controlled you. The shift you are entering is not simply breaking chains, it is erasing them. It is dismantling the very roots that once held you in cycles you thought were unbreakable. You may have felt a strange heaviness in recent days, or an unusual sensitivity, or moments where you felt emotional pressure rising without explanation. Michael says this was your spirit sensing the coming alignment. When heaven prepares to elevate someone, their inner world shifts first. You have been feeling the early tremors of spiritual promotion. The tension you felt was not punishment, it was stretching. Heaven was making room in you for new clarity, new strength, new discernment, and new identity. You are being prepared to carry more authority than before, and that preparation always begins with internal pressure. Michael shows a powerful vision, you standing upon a vast battlefield, but not as a wounded soldier. You stand as a conqueror, unharmed, unbroken, untouched by the debris around you. Your spirit looks stronger, taller, and more radiant than you've ever seen yourself. This battlefield represents every challenge you endured, every storm you survived, every emotional weight you carried. But the fact that you stand firmly in the center of it reveals a truth heaven wants you to understand. You were never defeated. You were refined. Every hardship sharpened you. Every setback shaped you. Every tear watered the ground for the blessings that are now preparing to rise. There is someone connected to your life who played a role in your spiritual battles without even realizing it. Their presence stirred conflict inside your spirit. Their inconsistency wounded you. Their silence hurt more than their words. Yet, heaven allowed their presence because they were unknowingly shaping your resilience. But now, Michael says their influence is breaking. You will no longer be emotionally affected by what they say, do, or fail to do. Their power over your inner world is dissolving as heaven reclaims your emotional territory. What once triggered you will now empower you. What once drained you will now fall away effortlessly. Michael speaks again, and his words strike like spiritual thunder. Your elevation requires the removal of every false attachment. Heaven is cutting ties that were draining your spiritual energy. You will feel distance forming between you and people who no longer align with your destiny. Do not resist this distance. Do not chase what heaven is releasing. You are rising into a higher atmosphere, and not everyone can breathe where you are going. Some people existed in your story only long enough to teach you what they needed to teach. That season is complete. Heaven is also revealing something about your next steps. For weeks, maybe months, you have been unsure of your direction. Your spirit has longed for clarity, but confusion clouded your path. Michael says that confusion is ending. A moment of divine clarity is approaching, sudden, unmistakable, undeniable. You will know exactly what to do, exactly who to trust, exactly where to place your energy, exactly which opportunities are aligned with heaven's plan. And this clarity will not come through struggle, it will come through revelation. Another vision appears, a great hourglass suspended in the air, the sand inside glowing with golden light. The upper chamber is almost empty. The lower chamber is almost full. Michael says this is heaven's timing. The shift is no longer approaching. It is descending. Once the very last grain falls, something in your life will open, move, or transform so abruptly that you will not question whether it is divine. You will know instantly. As this part nears its end, Michael offers one final message. Remain awake. Heaven is about to speak, and the instruction will carry your next breakthrough. What comes next will change everything. Before we continue, take a moment to like this message, share it, comment with faith, and subscribe so you stay aligned with every divine word release. Your engagement helps carry this message to those who desperately need it. Type "I welcome heaven's clarity" in the comments if your spirit receives this. Blessing code 882 has now been released. Beloved heart, breathe deeply as this next revelation descends, because Archangel Michael is stepping forward with a force that signals a new level of spiritual unveiling. His presence wraps around your atmosphere like a shield, not only to protect you, but to prepare your spirit for a truth that has been waiting in the unseen for far too long. He raises his sword slowly, deliberately, as though cutting through layers of spiritual fog that once blurred your clarity. The prophetic emergency over your life is entering its next phase, and heaven is drawing you nearer to the center of the shift that was ordained for this very hour. The spiritual countdown has not stopped. In fact, it has sharpened. Every breath, every thought, every moment is aligning you with a destiny that has been patiently unfolding behind the scenes long before you realized the magnitude of what was forming. Michael reveals something that your spirit may have sensed, but your mind struggled to articulate. Your life has been sitting at a threshold, a spiritual border, a place where heaven has been preparing to move you from one dimension of purpose into another. You've been standing between who you used to be and who you are becoming, and the tension you felt lately, the inner stretching, the emotional pressure, the sudden moments of exhaustion mixed with unexpected clarity, were all signs that you were nearing this threshold. Heaven does not elevate you without shifting everything inside you. And Michael says you have been undergoing inner renovation, whether you recognized it or not. There are parts of yourself that have been dissolving. Old beliefs, old fears, old emotional narratives that once held you hostage. You may have even felt moments where your identity felt unfamiliar, as though you were losing something within yourself. But heaven says you were not losing. You were shedding. You were stepping out of spiritual garments that no longer fit. You were releasing the versions of yourself that were shaped by past pain, past trauma, past disappointment. Michael says heaven has watched you try to survive seasons that were meant to strengthen you, and now that strength is rising to the surface in ways you may not fully recognize yet. Another vision appears, a vast landscape stretching endlessly under a sky filled with shifting light. In the center of this landscape stands a towering pillar made of pure light, rising into the heavens. Michael reveals that this pillar represents your calling, your purpose, your spiritual assignment. The reason your spirit has always carried a depth that others may not have understood. You were not created for the ordinary path. You were crafted for a journey that carries weight, authority, and divine intention. And in this moment, heaven is lifting you closer to that pillar, aligning you with a purpose that has been whispering to you since the earliest days of your spiritual awakening. Heaven also reveals something about the emotional turbulence you've been experiencing in recent weeks or months. You may have felt disconnected from certain people. You may have sensed distance growing between you and individuals who were once significant in your life. You may have felt a strange disinterest in old habits, old conversations, or old environments. Michael says this was not random. This was the spiritual pruning that must occur before elevation. Some connections were rooted in your past, not your future. Some relationships were tied to the old version of you, not the awakened version you are stepping into. Heaven allowed the distance because the alignment you are walking into requires purity, pure intentions, pure connections, pure pathways. Michael speaks with solemn weight. You cannot carry yesterday's attachments into tomorrow's assignment. Heaven is untying knots you didn't realize were binding you, removing voices that drowned out your intuition, silencing influences that distorted your perception. You may feel sadness at some of these changes, but heaven says what is leaving your life is not being taken. It is simply no longer needed for where you are going. There is someone whose presence in your life caused confusion, instability, or emotional imbalance. Their influence tugged at your peace, even when you tried to overlook it. Michael says heaven is lifting the veil around that connection. In the coming hours or days, clarity will arrive so powerfully that you will no longer question what your spirit has been trying to show you. Truth will stand in front of you, undeniable and unfiltered. And with that truth will come freedom. Freedom from emotional cycles that drained your spirit for far too long. A new vision unfolds, a staircase carved from shimmering light stretching upward into the unknown. Each step glows brighter as you ascend. Michael says these steps represent the stages of your elevation. You are not climbing blindly. Every step is divinely placed. Every movement upward is guided. Heaven is not asking you to leap into the unknown without support. Heaven is instructing you to rise one step at a time, trusting that each step will appear exactly when needed. You are entering a season where your inner knowing will become your compass. Michael says you will receive sudden insights, clear, strong, unmistakable, that will direct your decisions. You have been asking for signs, and heaven is answering not with small hints, but with undeniable revelation. There will be moments where you will feel the presence of heaven so closely that it will silence every doubt you once carried. What once confused you will become obvious. What once troubled you will lose its power. What once felt heavy will break apart and fall away. As this message nears its close, Michael gives one final instruction. Stay spiritually awake. Something is approaching your timeline that will shift the direction of your next season. And he emphasizes that the moment it appears, your spirit will recognize it instantly. Before you scroll or move forward, hold on to this truth. The next revelation will connect everything heaven has been showing you, and missing it would mean missing a piece your soul has longed for. Type "I rise into my divine assignment" in the comments if your spirit receives this. Blessing code 633 has now been released. Beloved spirit, steady yourself once more, for as this next revelation opens, the atmosphere around you begins to thicken with a sense of divine inevitability. Archangel Michael steps forward with an intensity that feels different from every moment before this one. It is not the intensity of warning or even preparation. This is the intensity of fulfillment. Something in the unseen is shifting with undeniable force, as though the very fabric of your destiny has begun to move toward you. The prophetic emergency spoken over your life is no longer a distant echo. It is unfolding in real time. Heaven has entered your atmosphere, and Michael now stands at the crossing point of your old life and the one heaven is preparing to draw you into. You may even feel your heart responding as these words reach you, as though your spirit recognizes a truth your mind has not fully understood yet. This is not imagination. This is alignment. Michael reveals that you are now stepping into the phase where spiritual pressure becomes spiritual release. For months, maybe years, you have carried weight inside you that you did not know how to name. You felt stretched, confused, hopeful, tired, awakened, discouraged, and inspired, sometimes all within the same day. You wondered why your emotions seemed to exist in layers, why your heart could feel both heavy and expectant at once. Heaven says this was because your spirit was wrestling with timelines. You were living in the tension between what was ending and what was beginning. And now, the ending is finally completing itself. What was once tangled is being straightened. What was once foggy is becoming clear. What was once delayed is being accelerated. Michael says the breakthrough you sensed coming is not something you imagined. It is something you were spiritually detecting long before it became visible. Heaven uncovers something crucial. A hidden spiritual resistance has been lingering around your life for far too long. A subtle force that drained your energy, blurred your intuition, and tried to convince you to settle for less than what God wrote for you. This resistance works through emotional triggers, unexpected setbacks, and even through people who unknowingly carried energy that disrupted your peace. But Michael says the shift now underway is breaking that resistance completely. You will feel a lightness in your spirit that you have not felt in years. A clarity that removes the internal fog. A sense of empowerment that silences every voice of doubt. Heaven is reclaiming territory in your life that was once dull through emotional wounds and spiritual confusion. Michael shows a vision of a long pathway made of glowing stone, stretching into a horizon filled with rising light. Along the sides of this path, shadows try to linger, but the closer you walk toward the light, the more the shadows dissolve. This path represents the journey your spirit has been preparing for. A journey of purpose, elevation, and divine clarity. The shadows are everything that once tried to pull you back. Old patterns, old fears, old relationships, old self-doubt. But Michael says the light of your purpose is now stronger than the shadows of your past. You are stepping into a season where darkness can no longer disguise itself as comfort. You have changed too much. You have grown too deeply. You have awakened too fully. There is a message Michael emphasizes again and again. Your spirit has surpassed the limitations of your old environment. This is why certain situations no longer feel right, even if they once brought comfort. This is why certain conversations drain you instantly. This is why you feel restless in places where you once felt stable. You are experiencing spiritual displacement, the feeling that comes just before heaven elevates you into a new position. Your spirit recognizes that the old level cannot sustain who you have become. Heaven is not asking you to fit into places that cannot hold your growth. Heaven is guiding you out of them. A revelation appears concerning relationships. There is someone whose connection to you has been running on emotional memory rather than spiritual alignment. You cared deeply. You invested deeply. You held on to hope for longer than you admit. But Michael says heaven is now lifting the veil so you can see that their presence no longer matches your elevation. This does not mean they are bad or broken. It simply means the alignment of your destinies has shifted. Heaven will give you peace about distancing yourself, and this peace will be the sign that the cycle between you has completed its purpose. What once held emotional weight will lose its grip, not through force, but through clarity. Another vision unfolds, you standing in a room filled with sealed scrolls, each one glowing faintly. Michael explains that these scrolls represent divine instructions, opportunities, and revelations that were reserved for the version of you that is now emerging. You were not ready to receive them before, not because you lacked faith, but because your spiritual identity was still forming. But now, scroll after scroll begins to unseal itself. Heaven is opening what was once hidden. Knowledge is coming. Direction is coming. Breakthrough is coming. And it will not come slowly. It will come with precision and divine timing. Heaven also speaks about your future. Your spirit has been asking for stability, but heaven is preparing to give you something greater, purpose. Stability keeps you grounded. Purpose elevates you. Stability helps you survive. Purpose helps you transform. Stability comforts the past. Purpose unlocks the future. And Michael says heaven is preparing to reveal the purpose that will define the next major chapter of your life. This revelation will not feel overwhelming. It will feel like remembering something you always knew deep inside. As this part nears its close, Michael offers a final instruction. When the sign arrives, move with confidence. Do not second-guess the voice of heaven. Something is on its way, an opportunity, a conversation, an inner knowing, a shift in atmosphere, and when it comes, your spirit will recognize it instantly. Hold steady, because what unfolds next will connect every spiritual thread heaven has been weaving. Type "I received the unveiling of my destiny" in the comments if this resonates with your spirit. Blessing code 1004 has now been released. Beloved soul, anchor yourself as you enter this next revelation, because the presence of Archangel Michael now surrounds you with a seriousness that speaks of destiny reaching its highest point of alignment. His wings spread wide, casting a protective shadow around your spirit, as though shielding you from any interference that might try to interrupt what heaven is about to release. This is no longer preparation. This is the moment where heaven begins to finalize what has been forming in secrecy, silence, and spiritual depth. The prophetic emergency spoken over your life finds its sharpest clarity here, as the shift intended for the next 3 hours draws closer to full manifestation. Michael stands before you, watching every movement of your heart, ensuring that nothing within you closes itself to what is about to unfold. You may sense a heaviness or a fullness in your spirit as you read this, almost as if something within you is expanding. This is not pressure, it is prophetic awakening. Michael reveals something crucial. Everything you have felt in these past days, weeks, or months was your spirit adjusting to new spiritual frequencies. You have been shedding, rising, breaking out of old versions of yourself, sometimes without realizing the transformation taking place. The heaviness you carried was not failure, it was transition. The confusion you felt was not disorientation, it was your spirit disconnecting from old timelines. The emotional intensity was not instability, it was spiritual refinement. Heaven has been purifying layers of your identity, preparing you to handle the weight of what is coming. Michael says your spirit is no longer a vessel of survival. It is becoming a vessel of authority, influence, and divine assignment. This shift required the breaking of old attachments, the dissolving of emotional illusions, and the awakening of insight that once lay dormant. Heaven now unveils the deeper purpose behind the internal battles you face. There were moments that felt like spiritual suffocation, moments where you questioned whether you had lost direction, moments where you wondered why certain doors remained closed despite your prayers. Michael says this was strategic divine protection. Heaven was withholding access because certain opportunities would have demanded versions of you that no longer exist. When God elevates someone, He removes everything that cannot sustain that elevation. You were not being denied. You were being preserved. And now that your spirit has expanded into the maturity required for this next chapter, heaven is ready to release what was held back. Michael shows a new vision, you standing before a vast archway made of living light. This archway pulses with energy, as though breathing. Each pulse represents divine timing. Each glow represents alignment. As you approach the archway, the ground beneath you shifts from shadows to radiant brilliance. Michael says this archway represents the transition point between your old spiritual identity and your new spiritual authority. You have been moving toward this doorway slowly, sometimes painfully, sometimes unknowingly. But now, heaven declares that you are close enough to see its light, close enough to sense its pull, close enough to recognize that the next step will change everything. Heaven also reveals a truth about relationships that have weighed heavily on your heart. Someone connected to your life has been tied to you through emotional history rather than spiritual purpose. You carried them in your heart far longer than you needed to, believing that time or hope or effort could realign their spirit with yours. But Michael says destiny is not shaped by memory. It is shaped by alignment. Their presence in your story reached its completion, and heaven has been gently detaching your spirit from theirs. You may have felt conflicted, confused, or guilty about this distance. But heaven says this distance is grace. This detachment is protection. This release is elevation. If they were meant to walk with you into this new season, the alignment would not feel strained. The fact that it does is your confirmation. Another revelation emerges concerning your inner world. Michael says your intuition is reaching a new height. You will begin to experience moments where your spirit picks up on things before your mind has time to interpret them. You will sense shifts before they occur, feel truth before it is spoken, recognize intentions before they are revealed. This is not sensitivity, it is spiritual maturity. Heaven is giving you discernment that will guide you into the opportunities that are meant for you, and away from the traps that were designed to delay you. The shift coming into your life requires a heightened awareness, and heaven is providing exactly that. Michael then unveils something powerful. The next phase of your path will open through an instruction. Not a complicated one, not an overwhelming one, but a clear, sharp, undeniable divine prompting. When this instruction arrives, whether through a quiet knowing, a sudden idea, an unexpected message, or a shift in atmosphere, you will recognize it instantly. Heaven will not send confusion disguised as direction. The instruction will carry peace, clarity, and urgency. Once you follow it, doors that were once locked will begin to open effortlessly. What was delayed will accelerate. What was unclear will crystallize. Heaven is aligning people into your life who will understand your calling in ways others could not. You will meet individuals who speak the language of your destiny, whose presence feels like confirmation, whose connection feels like purpose rather than obligation. These souls are part of your elevation, and their arrival is timed perfectly with a shift approaching your life. Michael says your circle is being reconstructed, your environment is being upgraded, and your relationships are being spiritually filtered. This filtering is not loss, it is revival. As this message draws to a close, Michael whispers one final instruction: remain open. Remain awake. Something is about to touch your life that will feel like divine electricity. This moment will mark the beginning of a new spiritual cycle. Hold your spirit steady. What comes next will be unforgettable. Type "I open my spirit to heaven's move" in the comments if this speaks to your soul. Blessing code 515 has now been released. Beloved child of destiny, take a slow breath, because this final revelation carries the heaviest weight of everything heaven has been preparing you for. Archangel Michael stands before you now, not as a distant guardian, not as a messenger passing through, but as a heavenly commander positioned firmly at the doorway of the shift that is moments away from entering your life. His wings are fully extended, forming a shield around your spirit, and his sword glows with a brilliance that signals the completion of a divine operation that began long before you ever understood what was unfolding. You have journeyed through layers of awakening, through emotional tides, through inner warfare, and through spiritual refinement. And now, heaven declares that you stand at the very front edge of transformation. A prophetic emergency sounded over your life was not symbolic, it was literal. Heaven has been counting down, preparing, aligning, cleansing, and shaping your path. And now Michael whispers, you are ready. Heaven reveals that everything you have endured was leading you to this threshold. The internal heaviness, the moments of confusion, the unexpected emotional waves, the sudden clarity, the unexplained shifts in your relationships, all of it was part of a divine timeline designed to purify your heart, strengthen your spirit, and sharpen your discernment. You were not being tested to break. You were being tested to awaken. You were not being stretched to exhaust. You were being stretched to expand. Michael says your spirit is no longer fragile. It is fortified. No longer uncertain, it is anchored. No longer wandering, it is aligned. And with that alignment comes the authority that heaven has been waiting to release into your life. A vision appears, you standing in a vast open space, the sky above swirling with radiant colors, like living light dancing across the heavens. In the center of this space is a massive gate, taller than anything you have ever imagined, carved with patterns that seem to shift and shimmer as you look at them. This gate represents your elevation, your transition into a spiritual dimension where purpose flows more clearly, where direction becomes undeniable, where your identity stands in its fullness. Michael places his hand upon the gate, and it responds instantly, flooding the atmosphere with a wave of warmth and clarity. He turns to you and says, "This is the moment your spirit was created for. Everything before this prepared you. Everything after this will be shaped by your readiness." Heaven now reveals a final truth about your relationships. Someone whose presence once held influence over your heart no longer has spiritual authority in your life. You will feel yourself releasing them without pain, without guilt, without hesitation. Michael says the shift dissolves emotional attachments that were formed out of loneliness, fear, or the desire to feel understood. Heaven is relocating your heart to a higher frequency where only authentic connections can survive. You will not have to force alignment in your next chapter. You will not have to hold on to people who are slipping away. You will not have to chase clarity. Heaven is doing the separating. Heaven is doing the sifting. Heaven is doing the rearranging. Another vision forms. You stepping onto a path lined with flames, not flames of destruction, but flames of purification. Each step you take causes the flames to burn brighter, lighting the way forward. This represents the purification of your decisions. You will begin choosing from wisdom instead of emotion, from clarity instead of fear, from identity instead of insecurity. Michael says heaven is giving you the kind of decisiveness that comes from spiritual maturity, not impulse. This is how you will walk into the opportunities that belong to you without second-guessing what heaven has already confirmed. Heaven also speaks concerning your purpose. You have been sensing it, feeling it, dreaming of it, questioning it, but never fully grasping the form it will take. Michael says the shift will bring direction with such precision that it will silence every doubt you have wrestled with. It will feel like a divine remembering, as though your soul is waking up to a truth it always carried. You will understand why certain gifts never left you, why certain dreams survived your darkest seasons, why certain desires refused to die. Those desires were planted by heaven, watered by your endurance, and protected by angels until the day you were strong enough to carry them. That day is here. A final vision unfolds, Michael lifting his sword and placing the tip gently over your heart. The light from the sword flows through your entire being, cleansing every remnant of fear, doubt, shame, confusion, and emotional residue. The light does not burn, it heals. It restores. It awakens. Michael speaks. What leaves your spirit today will never return. And what enters your spirit today will never be taken from you. You are about to walk into a season where heaven's movement in your life becomes unmistakable. Signs will appear clearly. Opportunities will arrive suddenly. Breakthroughs will unfold naturally. You will not have to force anything. You will not have to beg for clarity. You will not have to doubt the voice of heaven. Everything will align with divine accuracy. As this message reaches its close, Michael gives one final declaration. The shift is no longer approaching. The shift is here. And your spirit knows this is true. Before moving forward, like this message, share it so others can receive heaven's guidance. Comment to anchor your faith, and subscribe so you stay connected to every divine revelation released in this space. Type "I enter my divine shift" in the comments if your spirit receives this. Blessing code 1444 has now been released.